Hello internet friends, Napiet here. Thank you for joining me as I do another look at my various collections. One big collection with focuses within it, all retro toys, but the next thing I'm focusing on in this video is MOTU Origins. Not something that I thought I would be collecting at the start, but if you're a collector, you know where you start is not where you end, or am I in the middle right now? And basically something happened, which I will talk to when I get to the individual figures, that made me jump into this line. When I realized, wow, these guys are really getting it right. This is exactly what I want. Unlike other lines that have been re-released recently, such as the real Ghostbusters, to my knowledge, that's never been released, maybe bootlegs or knockoffs, but the original company never re-released those beyond the late 80s, 90s. So that's great to be able to get hold of those. But things like Masters of the Universe have been available in one form or another over the years. I'm thinking specifically of the Mattel Collector's Classics line, which were something that I thought about getting into but never did, basically because they always struck me more as collectibles than toys. They were designed for collectors, and although I appreciated how they looked, wasn't quite what I was looking for. The amazing thing that Mattel has been able to do with Origins is bring the characters to mainstream retail. They're available at Smith's Toys, The Entertainer, big outlets, and all of these lines that I collect generally aren't. So they are knocking it out the park with these original toys from the 80s. Kids now must be buying them, and they are also great for a collector like me, so it's win-win. So without further ado, let's look at the toys that I've got so far from the collection, and I'll talk a little bit about Masters of the Universe and the legacy of the toys specifically. First, let's have a look at He-Man. Okay, here's Mr. He-Man boxed and opened. Followers of the channel know that I'm not generally an opener, but you might be able to guess why I have done this, because it's a unique line in that they are not the original molds. They've made changes to the design of the figures and how they function. If you're a vintage MOTU collector, the problem for many years has been that the O-rings inside the groin of the figures start to deteriorate. They no longer stand, and it's a bit of a problem if you're collecting vintage Masters of the Universe, and the Origin line fixes it in that these joints are a lot stiffer. There is no rubber O-ring that can deteriorate inside, and they've also made additions and that add to the posability of the character while staying very close to the originals. I think in terms of a line that might exemplify what retro collectors are looking for, something that is quite close but also makes improvements is seems to be the way to go. It's what they've done with some of the Transformers. I'm not sure about the Ghostbusters ones, but it's definitely the case with these, and it makes it not only affordable, but it removes that problem of the deterioration that is the bane of so many vintage Masters of the Universe collectors, and that's another reason why I like this line. So I took this guy out to have a look at the posability, and it really is great. He-Man and Skeletor, who's the one that I will look at next. Let's bring him center stage. Where is he? He's over here. I said in the introduction that these were the two. He-Man was the deciding factor, and Skeletor in whether I was going to collect this line. Initially, they released these two figures, the most important figures, with very different head sculpts to the originals back in the 80s. And although at the time when I was watching the cartoon, I did think it was weird that He-Man looked nothing like his cartoon equivalent, I do want the original toy head, and that is something that I think they made a mistake with. The first version of the MOTU Origins He-Man, and also Skeletor, he was scowling or screaming, trying to make him look a bit more dynamic and scary, I guess. But it wasn't like the original, and I thought, well, if they're going to be making those kinds of mistakes, I'm not going to get into that line. The chances are they will continue to do that. make mistakes with other characters. But what they did was completely did a U-turn and brought out these versions that have the classic heads that are very close to the vintage. And that convinced me, right, they know what we want. They're going to continue to try and create what we want. So I can jump into this line, and from that point, I've never looked back. So He-Man and Skeletor, they're core characters. And like I say, he's very different to how he was in the cartoon, but I do like that original He-Man character. I didn't realise back in the day when I was a kid, because we don't, that this is such an easy, relatively easy line for, if you compare it to something like Transformers where every mould is different. They did some duplicates and repaints in the line, but generally speaking, each one is very different from the next. Masters of the Universe is a line designed to be reused, so a lot of the bodies and stuff, they can just continually reuse that mold with some embellishments and new paint jobs and call it a new character. You see that all the way through. I didn't realise it, and I've realised it as an adult, but it doesn't, it kind of legitimizes it for me. That's a strategy that modern companies continue to use today. If you look at the number of things that come out with the Marvel Legends line from Hasbro, they are doing that. They reuse bodies, and it makes it a lot more affordable. They can create many more characters. So as long as each character is unique and different, I can see why they do that. So a bit of an education collecting as an adult. So what did I get next? Oh, the next one is interesting to talk about in terms of a change that they made that I think is the correct one, and that is Man-at-Arms. It might be a good idea to have a look at something else I got in conjunction with him. They released this, the Eternian Guard, and collectors of the originals will see that the Eternian Guard's head, the alternate head that you get in this kind of big figure pack, you can create two characters basically with this figure pack. The Eternian Guard and something else. Man-at-Arms. I think Man-at-Arms. Yeah, that's it. So that's the Eternian Guard with the helmet on. And then you swap it out with all this and you've got a Man-at-Arms, which is what he is called. But he never had the mustache. These are the thing that I'm batting around the issue here. The original toy never had the mustache. It just looked like that head there. And they brought out Duncan, Man-at-Arms, He-Man's trusty advisor and main guy, with the mustache, which is like one of these subtle tiny changes. It's all down to the fans and what we would recognize as being cool, and that's a definite plus. So where they made the mistake early on with changing Skeletor and He-Man, I think that's an early change that they made that was the right choice. So I do understand how it can be a bit of a minefield, but I love these two characters. I would love to army build and take stuff out, but I'm just getting one example of things like that. I don't think I'm going to go crazy and get 6 of those guys, because I'm not doing dioramas. I'm not taking things out of the package. But yeah, I think that adds variety and accuracy with the cartoon, and also the fact that you can world build with these kinds of packs that they're bringing out is very, very cool. There was nothing like that back in the day. Yeah, very happy with Man-at-Arms. He's one of those characters that was always in someone's collection growing up, and I found him kind of boring. He wasn't as interesting to me. I think I actually came up to Masters of the Universe a bit late, because the figures that I remember the most as the most interesting were some of the later figures, and the others like Trapjaw, Man-at-Arms, Teela were always kind of just there in my friends' collections, and I probably had them, but I think I had the later figures. Anyway, Teela was another one that, like, when I was growing up, I wasn't particularly interested in. I'm not sure what this says about how we change, specifically as men, but as a boy, I was not remotely interested because she was a girl, and that's kind of irrelevant to what's going on whatsoever. You know, I kind of liked her, I just accepted her, but I wouldn't like to be seen playing with her because, well, when I was growing up, you were desperate not to appear effeminate in any way, and playing with girls wouldn't have worked. But as an adult, I think she's fantastic, and I like the female characters, some of the best now. They've brought out Teela. They're bringing out a version of Teela with Zoar, the eagle. Can't wait to get hold of that. I love the sorceress. I love the Eternian goddess. All the female characters that they're doing. I like them the most, and it's probably because of all the characters we were talking about, the fact that the body swapping is going on throughout the line, and the body for the female is completely different, so it's something and they do reuse it in the same way, but again, it just pops because against the majority of that same body, the female characters stand out. And Teela is just a classic. She's very cool. And her unusual background is something that they've touched upon. And so, you know, in the mini comics, she was, I think, I can't remember exactly, but at various times, Teela or someone Teela-like has been in the lore in one way or another. At one point she was the sorceress, or the sorceress was, you know, she was related to the sorceress, whatever the hell is going on. And they've kind of nodded on to that. Like, I'll just get a figure that kind of ties into that. One second. I've totally broken my chronological order now, but it seems relevant. Let's talk about the girls at this point. And the Eternian Goddess, she was in one of the early mini comics, and as you can see, she's very similar. She appeared very similar to Teela. So the fact that they've done a figure of her, even though later on she was kind of written out of the continuity, and I think morphed into the sorceress. I think all this strange development of the lore from the comics to the cartoon, the divergences and the changes over time, was why this particular figure, I love this one, which never existed back in the day, but the sorceress did, and I never had her, and she always had a kind of a mystique surrounding her. Exactly who is she? What is her relationship to Castle Grayskull and He-Man? She was one of the most intriguing characters, so I was really happy to get hold of this, and her wings in particular. This is one that I would really love to take out of the packet, because I think even though she is exactly the same mould, I believe, as Teela, she looks so different, doesn't she, because of the paint job and the wings on the back, which look great when they're folded out. One of the ones that it's a shame I don't open these things. If I had money to burn, I would buy two of everything, but I don't. Let's move on to the next early ones that I got. So I definitely collected these things as a kid. Sounds like a silly thing to say, but I can't remember exactly whether I had them or not, as I've already mentioned. Beastman and Trapjaw were two of the very early figures that I remember always being around and liking them, but they kind of seemed a little bit, they were great. When I got Skeletor, it's like, right, well, I need Trapjaw to go along with him. He's key henchman. Beastman is really number two, I guess, to Skeletor. But they were, compared to the later ones, it's weird to say, but these seem quite low-key, modest. Trapjaw is just a guy with a metal jaw, and Beastman is just a orange dude with fur. And when you compare them later to the likes of Snout Spout and Mosquitor and all these crazy designs that they did with play features, these guys just seem like cool but very straightforward variations. Metal guy, cyborg guy, beast guy. And you can tell with the name, he's just a beast, man. He's also one of the ones that they've been doing concept figures. So how he appeared in the early artwork for the comic books, they've brought out a variation, Lords, when it was called Lords of Power before it became Masters of the Universe. Again, there are omissions in my collecting, so these guys were absolutely on the list for me, but stuff like those variation figures, not so much. They didn't exist back in the day, and I can't really remember them in the mini comics, so they brought out, as well as Beastman. Another example would be Stratos, who I'm going to move on to next. A core character, core ally of He-Man, one of the earliest figures in the line from the Heroic Warriors. And MOTU Origins, they've brought out a version of him with just flesh tone all throughout as he appeared in the comic. And I feel like I'm not alone in this, in that that's not a high priority for me. I don't remember it. It's a little bit good for, if you're a completist, I can see you going for everything, but I don't necessarily need that myself. I don't have a problem with kind of picking and choosing here and there, either because it's not significant from a memory basis, or I just think it, in the case of Stratos, I don't think it looks very good in the packet. I just think it looks like what it was, a kind of an early experiment. He looks a lot better with grey skin, so I don't want something that I find objectionable up on in visually. It's like putting a painting up that doesn't inspire you, doesn't look right to you. Another must-buy figure for me was Triclops, one that I definitely did have in my toy box, and fond memories of playing with him for hours on end. A really intriguing character, a little bit more of a play feature in terms of how you can turn his eye around and stuff. Hoovering up these early figures at this stage, Triclops being one of them, I wanted to get to that point, and there were some key others which I'll show you in a little while. I'll point them out when they stand out as ones that I particularly liked as a kid. However, yes, I was still playing catch up like I have been with a lot of these lines, and to get hold of everything that they had brought out, I needed to create a spreadsheet to keep track. I mean, it's a great testament to how popular the line has been that they've created so many figures, and it's really probably the leader at the moment in terms of the most stuff of these retro reissue lines that have been created so far. It's MOTU Origins is the front runner. Ram Man, another favorite of mine, and in terms of the body, one of the most interesting in that he varies hugely from all the rest. I don't think he came in any special package back in the day. He was just in one of the normal packages, but for the bigger figures you do have to pay a little bit more money. Don't begrudge Mattel doing that a little bit, particularly for the interesting figures. You do get a lot of extra stuff, an extra head and weapons with him, so that's cool. But yeah, so they lavished a little bit more time on him, and he was the first deluxe figure I got. The next deluxe figure that I got was Clamp Champ, another one of the early ones, something I didn't have as a kid, and he doesn't seem to be one of the most popular ones. You can, like, if you get into MOTU Origins now, everywhere has Clamp Champ still in stock. I guess he's one of the most boring characters. He's just a guy with a clamp, a little bit like Fisto. I would hope that it's not because of the colour of his skin that he's not particularly popular, but it could be. Unfortunately, that could still be the case. But I definitely wanted to get hold of him. He's one of the original figures I never had as a kid, but I want him there, especially when they've lavished so much care and attention on the package, and he's a deluxe dude. And I missed Evil Lynn from the ladies. She's one of my she's one of my favorites from the Evil Warriors again, and the pun is ridiculous. It's one of the ones that my wife picks out from the wall when she does come into my collecting room as one of her favorites because of Evil Lynn. If you're not interested in the line, you don't know the backstory, you don't know who this woman is, you just go for the puns, I guess. And another one that they did a variation with more human-like flesh tones, but I've not gone for that. I've just gone for the classic Evil Lynn with the yellow skin. I realized through starting to collect that a lot of these things, like, although I loved the media, I loved the Star Wars movies, I watched the Masters of the Universe cartoon. Actually, I started with the toys before I saw the media proper. Although the cartoon was a commercial, essentially an extended commercial for the toys, I just liked the toys and then got into the media the other way around. So that was interesting, an interesting discovery for me. And so Evil Lynn in my mind has got yellow skin and always will have yellow skin, so I don't need a version that doesn't. For a bit of variety at this stage in the video, I will get one of the boxes, and the first boxed dude is obviously a Battle Cat. Fantastic idea, and just, we all know the story of how he was a Big Jim figure that they basically painted. Was properly in the Big Jim line. He would have been a normal sized tiger, but they needed a mount for He-Man, and they just took one of those figures and painted it green with orange stripes, and that becomes Battle Cat. He's such a fantastic character. The idea that, like Adam, he transforms, and I can't remember if this was in the mini comics or not, but I like the thematic coherence of, he is a cowardly cat Adam is not cowardly, but he's weak, and they both transform together. I just think that's an interesting idea, that the two of the core characters both have that trait and they do it together. But yeah, they've reproduced him really well. The original one was just a lump of plastic. He had no articulation, so Battle Cat now has his articulation with him, on him, and yeah, he's really cool. Prince Adam on Sky Sled, that's one of the ones that I haven't got in my collection. I won't be going for that because of the Prince Adam figures. Doesn't have the He-Man head, so I won't be going for that one. But yeah, I like the fact that on the back of the packages they are telling you where they're up to with the line at various stages. You kind of track it that way. I wish more lines would continue to do that. And thematically, we've got to go on to the equivalent, which is Panther, Skeletor's opposite number for Battle Cat, and they brought out two versions. This is the limited edition. Well, they say limited edition, it's a bit more expensive. The default vintage one had this as standard. Of course, in 2022 it's a special thing to have it flocked, so you has special skin that is flocked. The vintage ones are really hard to get without the flocking all flaking off, so to have this now is another great thing that they're doing in the Origins line. I got this from Forbidden Planet in the UK, a retailer that I'm not overly fond of, and it was at the early stages when I didn't really know what I was doing yet, and I just wanted this limited edition, and I was scouring the internet for shops that might have it. Not Entertainment Earth, Forbidden Planet said they had it, so I clicked, I'll have that please, and of course it was a pre-order, but they didn't say that it was a pre-order. They obviously didn't have it in stock because I had to wait 2 months for this thing to arrive, and then when it did arrive it had this scratch. It was not well packaged. Forbidden Planet is not one that I would point out. Wouldn't it be weird now if all these videos went viral and they asked me to sponsor them, asked to be a sponsor? That's never going to happen, but I guess I can't now because I'm being honest. Yeah, but he looks great. There are scuffs here. Another thing that I was not happy with. He's obviously been scuffed against the window, but he's my example, and I have seen other examples. There are always scuffs around some of these elbow joints and stuff. But Panther, I'm glad Mattel made a version with the flocking. It would have seemed like you were missing something if they hadn't done that. They're charging us extra, but fair enough. Let's stick with boxes and mounts, because here is another one that I had just had to get hold of. And I should say I'm being very selective with which of the vehicles I'm getting. I don't think I'll be getting Castle Grayskull because I don't have the space to display it. I think the dog might be barking. So yeah, Stridor, he's one of those cool vehicles that was a little bit of a luxury for me. I already had Battle Cat, so in my mum's mind, I'm sure she looked at Stridor and thought, well, that's just, if He-Man rides on that, he's already got a cat, why does he need a horse? She never got me this. I never had it. It's a big, bulky, chunky toy, and I think they did a fantastic version of updating it. You get tons of stuff inside. A little base for him to stand on, some cobblestones. I was always intrigued by him. It was like a special occasion when He-Man would ride on Stridor instead of Battle Cat, so I definitely needed him in my collection. But as I say, I am not going crazy with the vehicles. The only other vehicle that I have got is the Land Shark, another big guy, a big chunky thing. You don't realize how big these boxes are, and I'm glad I got these few just to test out, okay, if I'm going to collect the boxes, how much space do I actually need? I'm going to have. They will take up space quickly for what they are, if you have a look. He does need a lot of space in the box, but the box is big, and space is at a premium for me. So I grabbed the Land Shark when it went down to something like £23, starting off around 40. So I thought I'll grab that up, might as well. It's one of the vehicles that I know the least from being a kid. If I remember the Battle Track, I think that's what it's called, and the Wind Raider more, but I don't know if I will pick those up. I just dabble. If they drop in price, see, getting a little bit more sophisticated with the collecting now. If things drop in price and they become reasonable, or not reasonable, I feel they're already pretty reasonable compared to some of the collectors lines out there. Origins is very reasonable, but if they come down and I'm able to get a bargain, I might grab them. But that's my approach with the vehicles thus far. But we've still got lots of figures to get through. I hope you're sticking with the video and enjoying it. Let's get through all these figures. So now we're really getting into the realm of figures that I remember very specifically, and one of them that I wanted was Stinkor. So I think this was wave 6 or wave 7 of MOTU Origins. Doesn't seem like, seems like there have been more waves, so you get roughly 4 figures per wave. So when Stinkor came along, I really wanted him and Buzz-Off. For some reason, Buzz-Off, I think, all right, we're going to go really sort of psychological here with our childhood self, but I think the reason I played with Buzz-Off so much was because we all took toys around with us as kids, right? We were doing something boring. Going to church it was for me. I needed something to keep me occupied. And the figures that I took with me were flying ones, because that made sense that they could fly with me. And I think that's why I remember Buzz-Off so clearly. He's perhaps one of the first ones that was really a really strange variation because of his head and his strange visors. I don't have much clear memory of episodes of the TV show. It's just the fondness for the toys that I'm going for, really. I remember the smell of Stinkor. His gimmick was that he stank. He didn't actually stink that bad. They just sprayed him with some kind of perfume, and I believe they've done that with this guy. As I say, you'll have to tell me if you've taken yours out of the package what it smells like. The name of it is up somewhere. So, you know, as a kid, I knew it wasn't actually the smell of a skunk. It was just some lady's perfume, but still, it was pretty cool. And I think Stinkor and Webstore were 2 in that same line together. May have got that wrong. I think I remember playing with him, but I can't remember having him. And his gimmick is really cool. He has like a grappling hook, can grapple around, and he looks very striking, doesn't he? He's one of the evil horde. Some of the evil horde, he's a variation of Merman, one that I've skipped. He's at the back. I've just seen him. I should have put him in with the early ones, but we're going out of sequence here. But he's just basically Merman painted like a skunk, and they both look a bit weird, right? They're kind of the goofy bad guys, but he really looks like demonic. So moving on to the next one that I'm really happy they've started doing, She-Ra. Fantastic. Now I am old enough to not give 2 hoots about what people think of me and what I'm into. I love the fact that they're doing She-Ra, the Princess of Power. She's awesome. It was a great idea to expand the interest of this to girls, and I found it intriguing as a kid, but you're so wrapped up in not looking like a silly girl who's into girls' toys that I steered away from She-Ra. But I loved Hordak, who was her opposite number, and they've done Hordak for us to get hold of. And I remember this being a really exciting time for the toys. And Hordak was one of the ones I wanted. Actually, in terms of design, I think Hordak is scarier than Skeletor. I can't remember if he was a buffoon. I mean, Skeletor wasn't a buffoon. He was just a frustrated leader, wasn't he? I'm not sure if that manifested quite as much with Hordak. But at certain points, Skeletor is hard to take seriously. And maybe became too familiar. Hordak looked like a really scary villain. An entry into that, and I think they're doing more of these. At time of recording, we have the Horde Trooper is coming out, so I'm looking forward to getting him and one of his henchmen. And I managed to get hold of Mosquito. I think this might be my favorite deluxe figure that I've got so far. Never had Mosquito growing up. The chest fills with blood as he sucks the blood out of his enemies. And again, lots of variation and extra gribblies. Unlike Hasbro, let's have a pop at Hasbro. You know, if you're going to charge people for a deluxe figure, you need extra stuff in there, and Mattel are doing it. Mattel are winning at the moment. at certain times it's a good idea to reflect in life, isn't it? And in terms of the collecting, I thought, let's have a look at some figures that really made me did assess exactly what am I going to be collecting here and why am I collecting it. The first one that made me think that was Faker. I never liked him as a kid. I thought he was dumb. Now, the idea that as a kid you would look at something that is just one step too far when you've got characters like Buzz Off, Stinkor, Trapjaw, but Faker, not buying it. He just obviously, no one would be fooled by Faker, and he just looks dumb with his clown orange hair. I didn't like him as a kid, so I was thinking, okay, where am I going to draw the line with this line? In the end, I ended up feeling like, you know what, if I remember it from a kid, from childhood, and it was available back then, I will probably pick it up. That's where I ended up. But another one that made me think that was Roboto. He was one that I liked robots. I was a big fan of Star Wars and anything mechanical, intrigued by that. But Roboto looked like a dumb robot to me as a kid. I wasn't convinced he was a robot. The fact that he was transparent, you could see the cogs inside, I thought was stupid. So for some reason I didn't like Roboto. I was very surprised when the He-Man Revelations series came out on Netflix and they focused so heavily on Roboto as one of He-Man's friends, because I thought, oh, you can't get more B-list than Roboto. And the next one that I don't like now, and I think I didn't like him as a kid. I can't imagine having liked him. He just seems lazy to me. NINJOR. Ninjas were all the thing in the 80s. And I would come to Masters of the Universe and He-Man from a break from all the ninjas. And then what did they do? Here's a ninja for you. I mean, the name follows the pattern of all the He-Man names, but even NINJOR, they've only changed 2 letters. So I just don't want a generic ninja. Try harder. Mattel. And I think even my 8-year-old self was thinking along the same lines. I missed him. In the initial run of the early figures, I have a scheme for putting them up on my wall, and Merman got stuck at the back. But he's one of the core evil characters, evil henchmen of Skeletor, and you've got to have hold of him. I'd actually forgotten that the toy was not the colour he is in the cartoon at all, and I was a bit confused. I was looking for, is this a variation of Merman? Where's the blue that I remember? And I was remembering the cartoon, and actually some of the toys, there was a line I think created by Super 7 where for Merman they did do a very cartoon accurate Merman, and I thought, is that the one that I want? But no, the vintage toy was very different, as many of them were before the TV show was locked in. The toys had their own life and continue to have their own life, and Merman was one of those that was strangely different. Merman. My shitty impression. Scareglow, one that I never had growing up. His gimmick is perhaps one of the strongest. He glows in the dark. He stands out. I mean, there were whole lines that glowed in the dark, but for Masters of the Universe, it was strange. He seems to be a fan favourite. I never really knew him very well, but I can see why, in that if anything ever happened to Skeletor, Scareglow would be able to pick up the mantle. He seems to have some kind of power that rivals Skeletor in some ways. Certainly in the new Revelations cartoon, he lives in his own sort of domain and stuff. I am going to watch all the Filmation ones and go back to the originals, but I haven't got around to it yet. And to be honest, they're a bit hard to watch as an adult. But, you know, I'll soldier through them. 2 more early figures along the same vein of the opposite number for He-Man, his Stalwart Heroes. I saw a really funny take on one of the mini comics with Fisto. He-Man thinks Fisto is dying, and someone had changed the bubbles, so he was saying there were too many of them, He-Man. I just couldn't fist them all. It's so strange. We're innocent as kids. We're not thinking about double entendres, innuendos or anything like that. He just has a massive cool fist. Let's call him Fisto. Ripe for comedy. He's cool. He's a bit like Duncan, isn't he? He's man-at-arms. If you had to pick ones that were always at He-Man's side, Fisto would be one of them, so I must buy. And Zodak. Can't remember how he turned up. I know he's some kind of weird guy who may not be on He-Man's side, and He's ambiguous. He's like a middle character, maybe good, maybe bad. Some kind of cosmic traveller or cosmic enforcer, it says there. It would be good if they gave us a little bit more modernised celebrating. They don't really tell us who they are. Zodaximan's power comes with the price of maintaining cosmic balance from anyone, good or evil. So he's amazing power. He's a bit like Silver Surfer or something, or the Watcher. Yeah, but I'm intrigued by him as an adult. As a kid, couldn't get more boring. I was just totally bored by him. Speaking of lazy stereotypes, some of this stuff is not exactly PC these days. Jitsu. I'm sure there are some people in China who look like that. But if you've ever watched Breakfast at Tiffany's, it's getting very close to the edge there with Jitsu. I suppose you could say he's just the opposite number of Fisto. He's got a metal chopping hand, a bit like the guy from Enter the Dragon. You have offended my family, and you have offended a Shaolin temple. I don't know who Jitsu's offended, probably half of China. But he's a cool character. I love the gold. In fact, metallized gold. Hasbro can't do it for C-3PO. They can do it for Jitsu's hand. Liars. And the two final figures I have to look at. One that was an absolute fave growing up. He was always in the toy box and going on adventures. His many faces. Apparently he's an actor. That's how he got into being the heroic life. He just found that he could act really well. It's a bit like Team America, right? We need a really good actor who can fool people. So when he switches his head, they have no idea he's the same guy, even though he's a massive blue bucket. Even though the face is inside a massive blue bucket, they've no idea who he is. He's the man of faces, many faces. And finally, Orko. I didn't expect to come to Orko finally. One that I never saw on the store shelves and never had. I don't know if it was a Transformers situation where he was maybe not released in this country. If you remember, Blaster, Swoop, Shockwave were never released in the UK. And Orko I can never remember seeing, to the point at which I was thinking, with the Origins line, have they just made Orko up? Because I can't remember him in the vintage. But apparently there was a vintage figure, but I just never saw him and never had him. He's so unique and so different. I just felt like, oh, maybe they didn't bother back in the 80s to do Orko. He's too weird. Apparently they did, and I just missed out on him entirely. So I guess we're ending with Orko right now. He is one of my favourite figures, the quirky cartoon comic relief. And as comic relief goes, he's not as annoying as some of them could be, like Wily Kit and Wily Cat. Snarf. Kill that cat. All right, I hope you enjoyed looking through my collection so far. I'm just catching up with putting everything on the channel so far, and as I get new things, I'll be doing unboxings, talking this. I might focus on particular characters. It's like a whistle-stop tour. Let's just have a look at everything at the moment. So if you're enjoying the videos, do let me know. It's still a very early days for the channel, so I am talking to myself at the moment and just putting videos up that I hope will be interesting. So if you have watched them, let me know. I have been Napiet, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.